The air in the Sultan's antechamber hung thick, a palpable weight woven from generations of ambition and the silent rustle of silk. Here, in the half-light, where shadows clung like conspirators, true power was not declared, but felt. A chill down the spine, a whisper barely heard. The Sultan, a man carved from years of conquest and betrayal, now sat a gilded cage. His gaze, once fire, held the distant mien of one who had witnessed too many dawns stained crimson. The air around him suffocated with the dynasty's precarious hold. Opposite him, yet never truly facing him, the Valide Sultan moved with a lioness's quiet grace. Her eyes, sharp as obsidian shards, missed nothing. Every flicker, every shift in breath catalogued. Her bloodline demanded ceaseless vigilance against the poison seeping from whispers, from promises. She was the shadow play's heart, her silence more potent than any decree. And then the Crown Prince, a furnace of restless ambition. He stood, his shadow stretching too far, too eagerly towards the throne. He coveted it, as a starved man covets bread, his impatience a raw nerve. Yet his hunger was tempered by the chilling knowledge of a rival, a younger brother, a whispered threat to his claim, a blade poised at the dynasty's throat. The silence grew, stretched taut. Then a soft, almost imperceptible thud. A delicate silk handkerchief, bearing the subtle crest of a lesser influential house, slipped from a courtier's sleeve. It lay for a heartbeat, a small white flag of unforeseen consequence, before a hand, swift and unwitting, reached to retrieve it. Not the courtier's own, but that of a young, eager aide, whose wide eyes met the Valide's glacial stare for a fraction too long. A simple object, a simple gesture. Yet, in this court where every thread held a secret, where every glance was a calculated move, implications hung heavy, like the scent of impending doom. The game, my friends, had just revealed a new, dangerous player. The chamber, a gilded cage of power and deceit, hummed with a false tranquility. Here, where every whisper carried the weight of empire and every shadow held a secret, the air itself seemed to thicken. You could feel it, couldn't you? The subtle shift, the tremor beneath the polished marble, even before the deed was done. A servant, a ghost in the rich tapestries, advanced with a silver tray. Upon it, a single goblet brimming with sherbet, its crimson hue, the color of a passionate promise, or a sultan's deepest fury, caught the light, sparkling. Rosewater, honey, pomegranate, a symphony of the Orient. Too sweet, perhaps, to be entirely innocent. The scent, cloying and heavy, clung to the air, a silken noose tightening imperceptibly. She reached for it. Her fingers, adorned with the emeralds of her lineage, brushed against the cool metal. A smile, as fleeting as a desert mirage, touched her lips. A sip. The sweetness, overwhelming, coated her tongue, a deceptive veil. Another sip. You saw the subtle pause, didn't you? The faint furrow in her brow, a flicker of something akin to unease. The taste, cloying now, with an unfamiliar, almost metallic tang beneath the honeyed facade. A body, however pampered, knows when it is betrayed. A tremor, a tightening in the throat, sudden and profound. Her eyes, those magnificent pools of ambition and experience, widened, reflecting a terror that had, until this moment, been a stranger to her chambers. The delicate hand flew to her chest, a silent, desperate plea against an unseen assailant. Her breath hitched, an audible struggle against the air itself. The profound silence that followed was not of reverence but of dread, a silence so absolute it pressed in on your very soul, daring you to breathe. The silk curtains, heavy with centuries of intrigue, seemed to stir, as if a cold, forbidden wind had just passed through the room. Then the goblet clattered. A sharp metallic sound that pierced the stifling quiet, echoing like a breaking promise. It rolled across the polished marble, a crimson trail of its contents spilling like a fresh wound, stark against the pale stone. A gasp, half-choked, escaped her lips, dissolving into the opulent tapestry of the chamber. Her form, once so regal, so formidable, began to sway. Her eyes, wide with a terrible, dawning understanding, darted towards the periphery, towards the deep shadows that clung to the alcoves. You felt it, didn't you? The chilling awareness that she knew, in her final moments, who had authored her end. From those very shadows, a figure emerged, swift and utterly silent, a predator unleashed. No words were exchanged, no pleas were uttered. There was only the visceral, desperate thrashing of a life fighting against an invisible tide. A brief, brutal struggle. Hands, strong and unforgiving, clamped down, not in malice but with a cold, surgical precision. Her body, once the vessel of dynasty, convulsed, a puppet with severed strings, collapsing onto the rich, embroidered silk. The very air in the chamber seemed to crackle with the forbidden act, a moment of raw power asserting its dominance. The struggle ceased as abruptly as it began, a final shuddering breath, a whisper that dissolved before it could form into a name, a curse, a plea. We will never know what final truth she tried to speak, only the silence remained, deep and absolute, a shroud woven by complicity and fear, sealing the secret tighter than any tomb. On the low carved table beside her, unnoticed until this moment, lay a parchment. Its seal, once a symbol of unbreakable imperial authority, was now shattered, split wide open, revealing secrets meant for no living eye. A testament to betrayal, perhaps, or a fabricated decree signed in the blood of ambition, sealing her fate and altering the very fabric of the bloodline. Look closer, into the gloom. Do you see it? The faint crimson stain on the silk where she fell, a silent, damning testament to the night's grim truth. The shadow it cast on the dynasty, a mark that would ripple through generations, though no one would ever dare speak its name. This was the moment, wasn't it? The true genesis of a game far more ruthless than any played on a chessboard. A game where the very future of the empire became the prize, and the cost was everything. Nobody was supposed to hear this, nobody was meant to see, but the walls of this chamber, they remember, and I was always watching. The silence of that night, heavy with deceit and the perfume of death, became the very foundation upon which a new power was built. A monument to poison and ambition, veiled in the soft rustle of silk. The dynasty, now stained, would never truly be clean again. The path to the throne, once merely contested, was now paved with crimson. The first hint of dawn, a bruised purple on the horizon, did not break the silence. It merely deepened it, pressing down upon the palace like a shroud. What secrets, you might ask, does such a profound quiet hold? Do not be deceived by stillness. It is often the most dangerous sound of all. In the hallowed chambers, the air was thick with unspoken commands. Servants, their faces pale as parchment, moved with a terrifying, practiced grace. No hurried footsteps, no clatter. Only the soft rustle of expensive fabrics, the muted thud of objects carefully placed. Each motion was a prayer against notice, a plea for continued existence. They were the silent architects of absence, clearing away not just spilled wine or fallen silks, but the very memory of what had transpired. This, my friends, is how a bloodline is preserved, through the swift and brutal efficiency of its shadows. And there, at the heart of this meticulously orchestrated deceit, sat the Valide. Her silks, a deeper shade of midnight, seemed to absorb the nascent light, leaving her form almost dimensionless against the gloom. Her hands, unblemished, rested upon a polished cedar table, but it was her eyes. Ah, her eyes. Once, perhaps, they held warmth or sorrow, or even the fire of betrayal. Now? Now they were polished obsidian, reflecting nothing but an unyielding, singular purpose. No longer the glint of ambition, nor the flicker of triumph, only the cold, calculating geometry of power consolidating itself. The game, you see, is not won in the heat of passion, but in the cold calculations of the aftermath, in the deliberate, chilling control of the victors. Before her, a scribe, his quill poised, awaited her slightest gesture. A parchment lay unfurled, its surface soon to bear a new truth. Not the truth, mind you, but the truth that would serve the dynasty. A fabricated decree, carefully worded, detailing a sudden illness, a tragic fate, perhaps even a selfless act of abdication. Every word chosen with the meticulous care of a surgeon, severing inconvenient truths, stitching together a narrative seamless as fine Damascus silk. A single nod from the Valide, the quill dipped, scratching across the vellum, each stroke a deliberate erasure, a meticulous rewrite of a bloodline's recent history. The weight of centuries pressing down on that fragile sheet. Then the heavy imperial seal, cold metal against warm wax. A press, a dull, final thud. The new narrative, now official. Sealed not with ink, but with the chilling resolve of a queen who understood that power, once seized, must be defended with absolute silence. The impression, sharp and final, was not merely a mark on parchment. It was a brand upon the very fabric of time, a declaration that this new chapter would be written in blood and silence. The sun rose higher, casting long, deceptive shadows across the courtyards. Soon, the muezzin's call would echo, summoning the faithful to morning prayer. And in that sacred litany, a name once revered would be pointedly, deliberately absent, vanished from the collective memory as if it had never been spoken aloud. A ghost, even before the body was truly cold. Such is the terrifying efficiency of those who orchestrate silence. They do not merely bury the dead, they bury the very echo of their existence. And what, my dear viewer, is more frightening than to be erased? To have your very being dissolved by the subtle poison of forgotten words. Time, they say, heals all wounds. A lie, however, is not a wound. It is a seed, planted in the dark, its roots twisting through the very foundations of a dynasty, unseen but ever present. It breathes, cold and unseen, in the very stones of the palace, whispering through the silk drapes of the Sultan's chamber, across the shadowed gardens where plots are spun, and into the cradles of heirs. Do you truly believe a secret of such magnitude simply vanishes with the turning of a calendar page? No. It transforms. It becomes an inherited shadow, a pervasive chill that settles upon the bloodline, breeding a paranoia so subtle, so insidious, that its victims mistake it for instinct. Suspicion became the air they breathed, the constant, unspoken threat of exposure, a silent hammer shaping every dynastic decision, every personal fate. Consider Sultan Murad, generations removed from that fateful night. His decree, banishing Prince Isa, a harmless distant cousin, to the desolate northern fortress, inexplicable to all. A man of letters, not a warrior, yet Murad saw a threat where none seemed to exist. Was it truly a matter of statecraft, or was it the ancestral echo, a tremor deep within the bloodline that sensed in Isa's quiet lineage a forgotten truth, a loose thread that, if pulled, could unravel the tapestry of legitimacy woven from that original betrayal? A whisper, centuries old, guiding the blade of his inexplicable cruelty, even as Murad himself remained oblivious to its source. The true cost of keeping the silence was not just paid in blood, but in the slow, agonizing erosion of trust, even within one's own family. And what of Queen Mother Safiye? Her relentless, obsessive quest for the Emerald Star, a jewel lost for decades, dismissed by many as mere vanity, but she too followed a deeper current. The star, it was rumored, held not just beauty, but a hidden compartment, a scroll, a name, a fragment of the past that threatened to expose the very core of the deception upon which her son's claim to the throne rested. She understood, without truly understanding why, that this single bauble could shatter their world, turning the silk of her power into a shroud, its glint a warning of poison waiting in the shadows. She pursued it with a zeal that bordered on madness, her every move dictated by an unseen hand, a silent command from that long-buried secret. These were not monsters, these rulers, merely inheritors of a poisoned chalice. Survivors, yes, but forever tainted, marked by the unseen cost of maintaining the lie. Every strategic marriage, every political execution, every whisper of a coup, all were subtly yet irrevocably influenced by the gaping, silent maw of a secret they never consciously knew, yet instinctively feared. The shadow of that night stretched across generations, twisting destinies, forcing choices, demanding allegiance to a hidden truth, a debt that could never truly be settled. And so the night passed. The whispers died, or so they thought. But silence, my dears, is often the loudest lie. That particular silence, it was not an end, it was the genesis, a seed of deceit sown deep within the Sultan's private chambers, under the very roof that sheltered the dynasty's future. Do you imagine such a secret simply vanishes with the dawn? Oh no, it hardened. It calcified into the very bones of this house, a malignancy that promised both power and paranoia. The bloodline, once perceived as a clear river of divine right, now carried a subtle, poisoned current. A tremor of doubt, a hidden flaw, passed down not just with every inherited crown, but with every glance, every guarded word. For who could ever truly trust when the very foundation of their power, the legitimacy of their claim, rested upon a phantom, a whisper of what might have been instead of what truly was? The weight of that unspoken truth, The constant fear of its unearthing became an inherited burden heavier than any imperial regalia. The inherent ruthlessness you observe in these halls, the chilling efficiency with which a rival is removed, the steel in their eyes, it wasn't born of mere ambition. It was cultivated, fertilized by the fertile ground of that initial betrayal. Each mother, each sister, each concubine who aspired to rise learned the silent, brutal lesson of that night. Power, true power, demanded an unwavering hand, a willingness to sacrifice truth and sometimes even love upon the altar of survival. This wasn't merely a choice, it became a prerequisite for their very existence within the gilded cage. This then became the unspoken, foundational rule of the Game of Queens. Not merely a contest of beauty or wit, but a deadly ballet of shadows and silk, where every smile hid a potential poison, every gift a veiled threat. Vigilance, ladies, became their most precious currency. The walls of the harem, once a sanctuary of seclusion, transformed into a fortress of suspicion, where eyes constantly scanned for the telltale sign of a hidden blade, a treacherous glance. For centuries, the women of this empire, from the humblest slave to the most powerful Valid Sultan, moved through life haunted by the ghost of that foundational lie. They learned to anticipate the stab in the back, for they knew, deep down, that the throne itself was built upon such a wound, and only those ruthless enough to inflict or endure such wounds could truly survive its grasp. Consider the profound cost. Not just in lives lost to the executioner's silk, but in souls twisted by perpetual distrust. The endless suspicion, the parched longing for genuine connection, replaced by a strategic dance of alliances and betrayals. Every triumph, every moment of glory, stained by the knowledge of what it took to achieve it and what it would demand next. The dynasty, in its magnificent ascent, became eternally bound to the darkness from which it truly sprang. The grand history they record, the valiant tales they tell, they are but glittering veils over a truth buried so deep it shapes the very air they breathe, the very decisions they make. The pattern, you see, it repeats. The echoes reverberate through generations, a constant hum of apprehension, a whisper of "what if" in every royal ear. A chilling reminder that the greatest strength can also be the greatest vulnerability. Because the original secret, the foundational lie of that single fateful night, it never truly died. It simply transformed. It became the very definition of their power, the unspoken language of their survival, and the inescapable truth of their destiny. The shadow cast then, it stretches still,